In 2014, I moved to England from Canada to gain work and travel experience, as well as to find myself. I ended up living in Essex with three other roommates. They were all women, all a bit older than I was. I was 24 at the time, Megan was 31, Sherry was 34, and Cassie was 38. Megan was from New York, Sherry from New Jersey, and Cassie from Poland. All four of us shared this three-story flat. The back of our home was the living room and kitchen. The back wall was complete glass that looked out into the garden, and the garden was completely fenced in. The house had an interesting dynamic to say the least, and tons of stories from that time in my life. I adored all my roommates except for Sherry. After living with her for 7 months, I was over her antics, and one day I came home from work, locked the door, and made myself something to eat, and went up to bed. I brought some work home with me, so I am in my nightie with all these papers around me and my headphones on, jamming out. I had headphones on because Sherry was out to dinner with work friends. That meant booze, and then soon after that, a tantrum was surely to come, so I just didn't want to have to listen to her crazy scream crying. Anyways, I am working away and completely focused until I feel something touch my shoulder, and that's when I look up to see a man standing over me. I don't register it right away and passively say, Sherry's room is on the second floor, and continue to work. You see, the thing is, Sherry regularly brought strange men home, so I didn't take it as much. After a few seconds, I realized that he doesn't leave and is still breathing down my neck. So I attempt to reiterate, Sherry's room is downstairs, but then he cuts me off and says, I am not here for Sherry. As he said this, I felt a cold chill ice my veins. My fight or flight instincts kick in and I began surveying the situation. I turned towards him and looked him up and down, realizing that he has a bottle of Prosecco in one hand and a knife in the other. He is about 5'10", wild muddy brown hair and black eyes. Also, he has a light blue polo shirt on and one side of his collar is popped up and he spoke with a distinct Manchester accent. Once I focused in, I realized his eyes were black because his pupils were completely dilated, meaning he was obviously on drugs. Shit, I was in trouble. I needed an escape plan. Unfortunately, this strange man was standing in between me and my bedroom door. So my next plan was that I needed to get downstairs, but I needed for him to think it was his idea. In that moment, I took a risk, and I decided to play along with him. In an instant, he used his knife to pop the cork, and Prosecco started flowing onto my carpet. I said, oh no, let's clean that up. I prefer to drink out of a proper flute anyways. He nodded, replying, yeah, you're a proper classy bird, let's go. I tried to act as natural as possible, while trying not to show that I am shaking all over, and I tried to gain control over my breathing. We take the long journey down to the main floor of my flat. He has the back of my nightie bunched up in one hand, and I could feel the point of the knife graze my back with his other. I was trying to playfully speak with him as we walked down the stairs, but I can't even recollect what I was saying because I was mostly rambling, and I couldn't hear anything other than the sound of my heart beating in my ears. Finally, we get to the bottom of the stairs, and there's a hallway to my left that leads to the front door. On my right, which is much closer to us, is the kitchen and living room. We made our way into the kitchen. I pointed towards the cabinets that had the wine glasses, to which he said he knew where they were, and began walking towards them. I now had the kitchen table in between us, and it was time to run, so I burst into a sprint down the hallway towards the door, but my shaky and sweaty hands fumbled over the locks. Eventually, I swing open the door and see two men walking across the street. They must have been walking home from the train, since there was a big train station in front of our home. I called out to them for help, and by the time I finished, I was suddenly flung to the ground. Little pebbles pierced my skin and sent sharp pains where they jabbed. The intruder had pushed me out of the way to run and escape, but one of the men chased after him, while the other told me to go inside and call the police while he surveyed my home. I ran inside and locked the doors, then I called the police. While I am on the phone with dispatch, I manically run around the house to double check all the windows and doors. Suddenly, I hear a loud bang on my door. So I inform the dispatch of the banging, and she informs me that police weren't there yet. Then I thought it might be one of the gentlemen who helped me. So I go to look out the eye hole, and it's him, the intruder. He came back, and now he's banging on my door, screaming that I had his glasses and that he was not done with me. In that moment, I absolutely freaked out. The dispatcher attempted to calm me down, but I was losing my mind. She then said, "They are pulling onto your street now. You should hear the sirens." I did, thank God. The intruder then blasts off. One officer jumps out of the passenger side while the car is still moving and chases after him. The second officer comes into my home. He interviews me and the two gentlemen, collects evidence, and takes photos. After some time of him being there, Sherry comes home and freaks out. Once the situation was explained to her, she said, "Oh my God, that could have been me." I thought, yeah, thanks Sherry, it's always about you. The next morning, I am called in to identify a man they had in custody, and when I saw him in the lineup, I immediately pointed him out. Afterwards, I go into a little room and the officer pulls out an evidence bag. He asked me if the items were mine. They were. The items included my underwear and photos taken from my home. The officer began to inform me that the intruder had been stalking me for about 3 months and had made a nest outside our home on top of a hill that overlooked into our living room and kitchen. This man was also a known sex offender and drug dealer. In closing, the officer then told me how lucky I was to get out practically unharmed because others weren't so lucky.